The Victorian Government is trying to make it easier to unmask anonymous bullies online and easier to sue tech companies for psychiatric harm. Now, if the proposed laws are passed, a tribunal could order tech companies to identify users accused of online vilification. The Allen Government is hoping to pass the legislation ahead of the November state election. Now, to discuss these proposed laws, I'm joined now by Lisa Given, Professor of Information Sciences at RMIT. Lisa Given, thank you for joining us this morning. Before we get into the specifics of it's a really tough problem to solve, isn't it?
Absolutely. We're talking about, in both cases, dealing with either vilification or dealing with potential mental health concerns raised on social media platforms. Neither of these is something that requires a quick fix or a simple fix. These are certainly very complex issues.
And what do we know of what's being proposed here in terms of the unmasking of bullies online? How that would happen, who identifies the bully, how are they unmasked and to who?
It's a great question. We don't know the specifics quite yet in terms of how the law is going to work, but effectively what the government is proposing here is that if a person is facing being targeted for vilification online, so for example, if they are being targeted because of their race, religion, sex, disability, other kinds of protected attributes by someone who is an anonymous user, the unmasking would allow VCAT, the Victorian Civil and Administrative Tribunal, to actually compel the tech companies to identify that person so that the person who's being targeted could seek redress.
Mm-hmm. And how does this work? I mean, if this is law in Victoria, when other jurisdictions inevitably come into play when we're talking about online activity?
This is a real challenge, and we're not really clear on whether the law would compel people, for example, across borders. That is something that I think will be sorted out as they go through the consultation period for this law. But of course, we're just in the initial kind of drafting stages, so we don't have all of those specifics yet.
Mm-hmm. And this idea that it'll make it easier to sue tech companies for psychiatric harm, do we understand how that would happen?
Right. So currently, the government has said it's actually quite difficult for people to pursue a lawsuit. Now, this would be for minor children, a case being put forward by a family, for example. They currently have to show that the child has faced a permanent impairment of 10% or more. So that's something that a doctor, a physician would have to ascertain. And that is the threshold that the government is proposing to remove, which would then open other people to pursuing lawsuits with the companies.
So what do you think the big difficulties will be here, and overall what is your reaction to what is being attempted here by the Victorian Government?
I think certainly it's interesting. Currently social media companies can be compelled in criminal cases, for example. So I think part of the challenge is really, what value add is going to be brought here. Perhaps for civil cases, this is going to make a difference. But there's a long road here, both for consultation, also the fact that the Victorian Government is going into a state election in November. So already people are starting to raise concerns about the timeline for consultation and whether these laws would actually be passed.
Mm-hmm. And as we said from the outset, it is a tough problem to solve. Do you welcome any attempts to do this, or do you think it really does need to be a more considered approach in each case?
I think what we're seeing, certainly around the globe, but also across Australia, is that different jurisdictions are trying to battle these complex issues in the ways that they believe they can. I think it's really positive when we start to see these kinds of changes being put forward, because it means other states, even federal government and global governments, start to again grapple with the changes that are necessary. But I think a lot of this could also be dealt with under the federal government's proposed digital duty of care legislation, which we also expect to be coming forward later this year.